All right, so let's jump over to I Married a Witch, which let me tell you, I loved. I loved I
Which
Married a
I
Witch.
don't. You say that you don't know what I like and don't like, and
Sometimes
I'm sometimes I'll see a thing and know you'll like it and you'll like it and I feel good. But then there's other things like Showgirls and I Married a Witch where I never would have guessed. Like, in general, I don't think you're gonna like it film and you don't like it, but I definitely miss the oddballs that get you. Because for the record, this is the opposite of the Lady Eve. I was not as into I Married a Witch.
I loved I Married a Witch. I do also love Showgirls. It's harder to I still think you're harder to peg down because okay, so The Night Porter I figured out is a movie you'd like, all right, and I get points for that. But like in general, I don't like it's very difficult to figure out what you like. Having said that, okay, so I Married a Witch.
Spoilers. You won't believe what happens in I Married a Witch.
It's not at all like the title implies.
It's my thing where I want to title all films based on let's scare Jessica to death. This one would be pretty simple, like let's marry a witch.
Let's marry a witch. Yeah. So this is from 1942, which is only a year later than the Lady Eve.
Yeah.
And it is directed by René Clair, who I think is a French director. And I think René Clair is actually more famous for, what is it, Le Million?
Right, which is the one I saw in film school, but it was only subtitled like maybe 50% of the time. So I cannot tell you what happened or if it was funny because I don't speak French and I slept through most of the film. But I would like to try and watch it again sometime because I hear it's good.
I'm pretty sure I know which one Le Million is, and if I recall right, I quite enjoyed Le Million. He also did one of the Agatha Christie movies, which is And Then There Were None. But anyways,
he's a real director. He's a real director.
He did things. He's known for things. This stars Fredric March. Hey, here he is again. And Veronica Lake. I was just talking about Sullivan's Travels. And some other people show up. Susan Hayward. It is. The screenplay by Robert Pirosh and Mark Connolly and uncredited other writers, including Dalton Trumbo. I think this ultimately had a few uncredited writers. But so I Married a Witch. So a witch is burned at the stake in what's the name of the city?
It's Colonial Salem.
Is it Colonial Salem? Okay. For some reason,
Salem is the big place, and we're on the West Coast, so we're not talking about Salem, Oregon. We're talking about Salem, Massachusetts.
There you go. But so it's burned at the stake in Salem, Massachusetts, and she casts a curse on the family of our guy.
I like when you say burned in the stake, I'm thinking of like Joan of Arc with poor Jean. What's her face, like actually getting burned by Otto Preminger. It's nothing like that. You don't see anything.
Oh, Guinevere, you should not be stepping on these things. My cat is being very cute.
And I'm just going off about 60s art house cinema.
Look at this adorable cat. She's so
She's
cute.
A witch's familiar. That's what she's here. She's like, I am a witch's cat.
And she's like, why are you holding me like this? I'm going to put you down now. Okay. She was trying to step on all the things. Okay, sorry. Starting over. A witch is burned at the stake in Salem, Massachusetts. And as she casts a curse on the family of the guy who ratted her out. It's Woolley is the last name of this family. And then we shoot forward in time, and on the way we get the curse is like you'll have bad marriages and bad love. And we shoot forward in time, and we get to see that it happens a few times. And now we're in the present, which is the 40s, and the tree is struck by lightning. And when that happens, it releases the spirits of her and her father, and they're both witches. And these witches, which are then smoke, wandering around on screen. I just love this movie. Are now entered back into society and are going to do things, including she wants to like be mean to Woolley, and like,
they're still going to take revenge. This is in some ways the Lady Eve plot is here, in that you have these kind of
it's a family of con artists who are
it's a family of con artists and a family of witches, and their goals are not pure and good. Their goals are bad. And in I Married a Witch, it's to take continued revenge on the Woolley family.
Yes, which now, you know, is features Governor Woolley, who is running for some sort of office, and he's about to be married to a woman who is a bit overbearing. And there's really not a lot of plot to this movie. It's basically like she accidentally drinks a love potion and he doesn't, and there's comedy from that, and she's trying to make it happen and he's trying to not make it happen, and revenge but not revenge, and that's kind of it. That's the movie. There's not a lot more to it than that. Okay, should I let you start or should I start?
You start. I think I'm pretty clear on my problem with this movie, and I will
I don't even disagree
on you at the end of it.
I already know what you're going to say, and you are not wrong, but it doesn't matter. So this movie is super silly. It is the kind of silly that I like, and I've never quite been able to pin down what is Theo silly. It's definitely not big misunderstandings or things that are like awkward where one person knows something and the other doesn't, or things that are embarrassing. I don't fully understand why one is or isn't one thing is embarrassing or not, whatever. But it's also, so I like Gothic. And I discovered this with the Vampire Lovers, but I particularly like campy Gothic. And you are not into campy Gothic as much as I am. We both
I like super serious Gothic,
like Crimson Peak.
Yes.
But
I like earnest, sincere Gothic.
Yes, we are both into Gothic, but you are not into campy Gothic.
No, you're right.
And this is Gothic, and it is campy Gothic. I mean, it opens with the scene where we're burning the witches at the stake, but like then there's like somebody, like there's an audience watching, and somebody's walking around like selling popcorn, except it's not popcorn, it's whatever the equivalent is in the 1800s. And I'm like, that just got me. That got me right at the start. And it's a really cleverly made movie. Like the way they're doing the shots are really interesting. The way we move forward in time.
It is the 1600s. I had to double check. It's not the witches weren't burned in the 1800s.
You're right. It wasn't.
They might have been.
I was thinking 1800s because that's one of the title cards that we go past as we see like, oh, and here's a Woolley with this woman who is mean. The way that these women are all portrayed is a little problematic, but okay, we're going to scoot right past that.
Well, the men are really the victims here, is what we need to remember.
The victims, yes, that's how it works. And it's just shot really clever with how we're moving past these like cards that say the date, and we see, you know, the different. I mean, it's Fredric March playing all these characters, and they're all dressed differently, and like we see it going past that, and then we're in modern day, and then it is literally just smoke that is like. They're like rear projecting, or I don't know what they're doing. Or not rear projecting. They're projecting onto glass or something and moving it by. I don't know. Somehow they're making it happen, and they're like wandering by the house.
Right. The little smoke, the two smoke people, which are Veronica Lake and the father character, are going on an adventure. You are just watching smoke talk to itself for like 10, 15 minutes.
Hilarious. And just to me,
it goes into bottles. It hangs out by the sink.
It's so much more clever than a lot of movies from this era are to me, just in terms of visuals, not necessarily in terms of writing, but in terms of visuals, it's just a lot more clever to me. The father is played by Cecile Calloway, who I don't know, but I think is shows up in things later on that we know him from. But he's pretty good in this. Veronica Lake is pretty good in this. This later on, she says the line that's at the start of the Dead Blonde series for You Must Remember This, which is like, which she says there's two different lines in this, which is
the one about I'm not used to seeing you dressed, because she's when she goes from being smoked to person, she's naked, and she keeps being naked. I mean, it's very it's kind of racy, but you don't see anything, of course.
No, but it is kind of racy for this era. But no, she says like, well, how do I look? And she's like, oh, it's just such a shock to see you dressed. And earlier she says, would you rather I be a brunette? Which is just a great line, and it's pretty silly.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I love just all of that. And it basically continues, including like, they show her and her father show up at the wedding, which finally does happen after a couple of non-starts between Fredric March and Susan Hayward, whose character name's Woolley and something else. like it's they show up and they're like in the doorway and there's this huge wind machine just blowing. Like they've got to have like 5 of these things just there, and just like this was probably miserable as an actor to just be dealing with, including women whose like skirts go all the way up and somehow
Yeah, I know. It's a way shocking. I mean, they got things past the code at times.
Yeah,
I feel like that might have gotten past the code because it's
just something so silly. Like it's a very plot-driven movie, and again, I like plot-driven movies more than you, which is a part of why I like noirs and thrillers and stuff a little more than you. Not that you don't like these movies, but just in general, they're more plot-focused. And she's like bewitched him, and he's like, "Oh, I've got to get you out of my bed." In an earlier scene, and she's just lying there, and like she's just saying things, and she's bewitching him. And see, this is the Lady Eve. She is not a witch, so. Not that bewitching. No, this is a witch bewitching someone. Anyways, and so she bewitches him, and so he hasn't like slept somehow, and he's all into her. And like later, the witch Veronica Lake just makes the
love potion.
Makes a love potion, which only she drinks, and that's kind of clever. But no, she also makes the lady, the one who's taking care of the what's her title? What would her job title be?
The maid, the housekeeper.
The housekeeper. Like she makes her fall asleep in front of the door, which is just silly and funny looking. And so there's just all that kind of stuff. And later towards the end, like the father doesn't approve of the daughter being with the March character. And like, so the father keeps getting drunk, which is funny to have like a witch who just keeps getting drunk and can't remember any of his spells. And they like trap him in a bottle of something.
Rum or something. Yeah.
And later at the very end of the movie, once we've blasted into the future 7 years and the two, Veronica Lake and Fredric March, have kids, we see that bottle at the top of the mantelpiece in like a cage or something with like something on top to keep the cork in. Like it is just like the attention to detail, like that's like a setup and a payoff basically. And it's like, so there's all that kind of stuff where it's like the plot's really solid, the visuals are really interesting, the story's kind of fun, if not terribly well written, but it's pretty fun. And I just like the conceit of the story, and like all the rest of the stuff that doesn't work be damned. That's kind of what worked for me.
So here I am to pee on your parade. So I disagree that the plot is really solid, but I agree with you. I think we talked with the bad movies of January about how if you're imaginative, you can be good or you can be bad, but you'll be entertaining if you were imaginative. And that's what this movie has going for it. All the stuff you mentioned, plus there's like a point where their car is flying and you just see this
I forgot about that,
flying through it.
The taxi driver is very confused.
Yes, and the part where that woman keeps during the wedding having to start the same song like 4 or 5 times. Like I know the 2 lyrics that open that song.
Yeah,
all that's great. What separates this from Robot Monster in my mind is that it belabors certain stuff. Like Robot Monster, and I'm not saying I Married a Witch is bad on the level of Robot Monster, but like it just kept going, like things just kept happening. Whereas with this, it's like the characters kept going back and forth. And if you're looking at what's happening with the characters, nothing is happening with the characters. It's like, she's in love. She's in love. She's in love. She's in love. He's resisting. He's resisting. He's resisting. There's like nothing. There's no intimacy. And that's where the plot doesn't work for me, because
characters be damned.
It's that part is boring and repetitive.
That's fair. You've got a point.
And to my larger argument, like all that imaginative stuff is great, and that's what I liked about it. And so going hand in hand with the fact that like the emotional plot of this is not very good, and this is a rom-com, so you need an emotional plot. This is not the Mission Impossible movies where it's whatever, who cares? There's not much romance in this. Like she falls in love because of a love potion. It's like, that doesn't get my little heart going. It's kind of not, it's existentially appalling actually, because it's like, so is that all there is? Like she's bewitched him and she's taking a love potion.
They don't take the time to build that up that much.
So I actually, in the same way that you while not enjoying Lady Eve would put it up there, I would actually still put this one up there because it is such a unique, weird little rom-com. Yeah. But it really falls down on the romance for me. And I don't see what they feel for each. I don't believe any of that. Like, and Veronica Lake is charming and interesting, but she doesn't have like, I don't see her falling in a real kind of love. And that none of that really works for me. So I understand why I Married a Witch shows up on these lists, and I would not hesitate to recommend it to people. But if someone's like, I really like it when I can really feel the way the characters connect, and when there's like these scenes of intimacy, and when there's a push pull between them, I know this is not. This is for like, yes, watching the smoke go around, the crazy inventiveness of it is super fun. But whenever it was like the characters talking and like her wanting him to love her, like I got bored and zoned out, and there wasn't much to it. So that is my issue. It also, the funny thing too is, it made me, not the funny thing, but it made me think about the Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie.
I think I was talking to Dad, and he said that Bewitched might have been like loosely based on this, or like have come from this movie.
I mean, they're both TV shows from the mid 60s, so a good 20 years later, that feature human males married to a witch in one case and a genie in the other. And it's just interesting that there was this kind of like era of, and then you think like Buffy the Vampire Slayer had some of that stuff in it. I don't know. I mean, I don't keep track of what TV type stuff is going on in the Western world at the moment, but it's just kind of interesting that there's this kind of kitschy. I think we think of it as kitschy now.
I have this weird theory where like supernatural stuff, I feel like doesn't tend to, supernatural stories doesn't tend to exclude women the way that some other genres do. And I've always wondered if that's because the men, who are often still the ones making these things, are in general bewildered by women. So they just sort of are like, women supernatural? Yes, of course that makes sense.
Right.
So I wonder if there isn't something there even for the like, I married a witch, sort of.
Also, doesn't it tie into like women are from Mars, men are from Venus, which bothers me.
Yeah.
But when you are in a relationship with someone, it can feel like you're dating an alien. But I think that has to do with gender and culture and a million things besides that kind of thing. But
we're even looking at this in a heteronormative way, and as we're going forward in society, we're sort of losing some of that, which is, I think, for the better. But I don't really have any refutation of what you've just said. You're right. The characters there's not that there's no character. It's just that like the romance definitely doesn't work, and there's not a ton of character. Like Fredric March gets more character. Veronica like really is kind of just a dumb blonde in this, a dumb blonde that can do magic, so she's not a complete dumb blonde.
Revenge. I mean, it is nice that she's not just another ditzy blonde. I mean,
she's a little more than that.
See, but when I think about it, I'm just thinking about the plot. There's the thing where she's in the building that's on fire, and he rescues her, and it doesn't make sense.
Plot isn't as
There's
strong
nothing where it's like, remember that tender scene between it's not there. Whereas I know it didn't work for you, but Lady Eve, even though it didn't work for you, you'll remember the scene where they're just talking with their heads pressed together.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But the same thing at the same time, like I'm going to remember the scene of them setting that building on fire, and the fact that Fredric March ends up in another flaming building. Like it's definitely
flaming building. Oh, was it at in Nothing Sacred? Was it on fire? No. You said Fredric March ends up in another flaming building.
There's 2 times in this movie that he ends up
in the 2 times. Well, everything went on fire in the past, Theo. Didn't Dawson City teach you that?
Well, yes, but in this case, it's because of a witch.
Yeah.
No, you're basically right. I would still put this above something like Nothing Sacred, where Nothing Sacred is still worth watching, definitely, if you're into these things. But like, I Married a Witch is just kind of unique. And a part of why it's unique, I think, is that it's really about like, to me there's something in here about like love not always being like this grand sentimental thing. Like in general, you're not a sentimental person, except that you're a little sentimental about love stuff, and like this is kind of like the opposite of that, where it's like she really only loves him because of a potion, but like why not? And he kind of gets I don't
mind it when that idea is explored, but it's not explored.
It's not explored.
It's just a thing that happens.
It's just a thing that happens. But like I kind of like that that's here, even if it isn't really explored. Anyways, so that's I Married a Witch. Yeah, I'd recommend this to people who like rom-coms. I mean, early Hollywood.
Yeah, I
rom-coms.
mean, personally, I'd probably still recommend The Lady Eve over this, but it's worth watching. It's interesting.
I loved it. Do you want to do the wrap up? I could do like a 5-minute wrap up or like a 3-minute wrap up.
I think we're pretty tight on timing.
Yeah,
you may want to hold on to it.
Let's hold on to the wrap up for next time. So that's it,
we always
guys.
go long than we think we're gonna go. So let's just be done.
We're done. We're done, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'll cover the movies we watched but didn't cover here next time. May you have a good week, and hopefully I've now caught up on Pigeon Verite, and hopefully I will release this stuff this week and not next week and all that. So anyways, nobody cares. I'm just being neurotic. Bye, everybody. Bye.